Thank you so much, Carol. You know, this is a wonderful opportunity to see how things can get done in transit in Tennessee, especially in Middle Tennessee, and it's really a product of groups working together. No one does it by themselves. The RTA, or the Regional Transportation Authority, which I currently chair, we can't do it by ourselves. We have to have all of the other partners like Cumberland Region Tomorrow. We have to have the Transit Alliance. We have to have all of these groups that have come together to really push for a lot of the improvements that you're going to see on the screen. But what I get to do today is I get to introduce the person who's going to tell you all about all of these wonderful opportunities. At the Regional Transportation Authority, we work very hard to try to work on a regional basis in our 10-county area to try to bring these changes to fore. And I think with the passage of the Improve Act this year, we've really gotten a head start, I believe now, on moving forward. But we are very fortunate today to have someone who knows more about this than I think anyone else, and who can come up and really give us a great overview and answer a lot of questions. And that is the Executive Director of the RTA, the Regional Transportation Authority, and he's also the Executive Director of the MTA in Nashville. And I think that he is going to give a wonderful presentation. So I'm going to sit down now and let you hear from the real man with the plan and the answers. Steve Bland, come on up.
Thank you, Mayor McMillan, and thank you, Carol, Cumberland Region Tomorrow, and the Transit Alliance of Middle Tennessee. It's a real pleasure to be up here in Clarksville, and usually when I'm introduced as, quote, the expert in this field in other counties, I can say, well, okay, yeah, I might buy that. But actually, in Clarksville and Montgomery County, there are a lot of experts, and this county and the city of Clarksville are extremely well positioned. Carol mentioned Mayor McMillan is the current chair of the RTA board and really is a respected leader in our region, so we're really appreciative. We work obviously closely with Mayor Durrett in Montgomery County, but I really want to give a shout out to Arthur Bing from our own Clarksville Transit System here. Arthur and I have worked closely, thank you, closely together in the Tennessee Public Transportation Association, which he's just wrapped up a 2-year term as chairman, and very instrumental in a lot of the provisions in the Improve Act. So I had the opportunity coming in to see several of Arthur's buses, our increasingly full park and ride lot at exit 11. So on a sunny day, I can't imagine a more pleasant way to start. I'm going to tee it up a little bit with some information and some things that are going on in the region and here in Montgomery County and Clarksville. And then we're going to turn it over to Mayor Durrett for some comments, and then Joanne Graves from the Transit Alliance will speak, and then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. But just to kind of give you a perspective on where we're going in the region. So these are the projections in Middle Tennessee, and if you've been here for any period of time, none of this comes as any news to you. It's certainly been talked up in the regional media, and there literally is not a county that isn't escaping a very rapid growth curve. Montgomery County is sort of on the front edge of that. I mean, if you look at, obviously a lot of conversation in our region centers around Nashville, but really when you look around our region, Nashville and Davidson County aren't experiencing the fastest growth rates in either jobs or populations. It is counties like Montgomery and Rutherford and Williamson and Wilson, the counties that kind of surround Nashville. And so the need to try to develop our transportation systems in a more complete manner, both locally here in Clarksville and also regionally, to make those connections among our job centers and our residential centers is important. By the way, by 2040, the Clarksville-Montgomery County area is projected to have over 300,000 people. So if you think it's crowded now, it's just getting more so. We're one of the challenges, I just sat in on one of Mayor Barry's task forces yesterday on housing affordability, and it's an increasing concern in Nashville and Davidson County that we're pricing an awful lot of people out of the market. And up here in Clarksville and Montgomery County, that affordability is still pretty solid. And by the way, I guess I do have to mention, I want to thank F&M Bank, not just for the breakfast, but also for holding my mortgage. Speaking of housing affordability, thank you all for that. Don't be going checking my credit record, right? Do appreciate that. So increasingly, people are looking at that trade-off of, can I get more house, more home, more land for a bit longer commute, and that's driving up our commute distances. So one of the things we factor into the whole housing and transportation affordability factor is, frankly, Montgomery County, Clarksville are going to become more attractive over time to more people who have sort of a Nashville-based commute, and we're seeing that year over year in the traffic volumes on I-24. We're also seeing it year over year on our Route 94, our express commuter service for the RTA. Traffic is affecting almost everyone. There are very few places that you go, certainly in the counties surrounding Davidson County, where people don't bring it up as an issue and can mention a fairly recent story of being stuck in traffic, if not on a daily basis. And that is only expected to grow. I always tell folks, you can tell I never intend to run for political office, because I always start these sessions off by saying, however bad your commute was today, it's probably as good as it's going to get. So we do need to look at alternatives. We do need to look at those options. I tell folks that a lot of people kind of perceive, well, it's mass transit versus car, it's carpool versus car, it's vanpool versus car. It is not. I will tell you candidly, you will pry my steering wheel out of my cold, dead hand. The car is the dominant form, the single occupant car is the dominant form of transportation in our nation, in our region, and it will be for the foreseeable future. There might be some question over the next 20 years or so as to whether we'll actually be driving it ourselves or the car will be driving itself. But you know, that is the dominant mode. So when we talk about mass transit, whether it's Arthur talking about mobility here within Clarksville, or us talking regionally, or it's as hot a topic in Nashville right now as any that you'll find, we're really talking about diversifying our portfolio of transportation assets. Here in Tennessee, and in the greater Nashville metropolitan region, including Clarksville and Montgomery County, we rank number 4 in freeway lane miles per capita. We rank number 5 in vehicle miles traveled per capita. We rank 76th in transit usage per capita. So it's just trying to balance that portfolio. It's not saying that you're just always going to use transit, or you might not ever use transit, but it's about diversifying that portfolio. And one of the reasons, frankly, is we just flat out can fit more people into the same amount of space. The Route 94, our Clarksville Commuter Express, and we are going to be talking about partnerships, and I think that route is a classic example where I see Mayor McMillan nodding and smiling, because when we talk about issues at the Regional Transportation Authority Board, one we talk about is the critical importance of first-rate park and ride facilities. And Clarksville is blessed, I think, and Joanne will be up later. Joanne comes out of Gallatin. Clarksville and Gallatin probably have the 2 premier park and ride facilities in our region. That is entirely thanks to TDOT. As they were doing the interchange improvements associated with the Hankook Tire project, they incorporated that lot in there. And if you've been out there, it checks off all the boxes. It's well lit, it's bright, it's adjacent to the interstate interchange. It's convenient for the bus to access, it's convenient for riders to access. As a result, year over year, we're seeing about a 14% ridership increase on the Route 94. It is now just slightly trailing one bus route that connects the west end of Nashville to the Music City Star. So it is rapidly climbing the charts to be the #1 commuter bus route in the RTA network. We recently added a trip to service. That was less than a year ago, and we've already got rider demand for additional trips, which is something that we'll be looking at. You can see the trends in population between 2010 and 2040. Significant growth within Montgomery County, significant growth as you get into the ring around Davidson County, but still, and I think fortunately for all of us, relative green space in between. And the idea that if we can carry more people in those congested corridors, like that I-24 corridor between Nashville and Clarksville, hopefully we can keep it that way. 1 million more people are projected to come to our region over the next 25 years. And if we rely solely on single occupant autos, that means we've got to spread them out a whole lot thinner, which means a lot of our very precious open space, whether it's farmland or woods or watershed, you name it, really becomes under threat. And I know when we've talked in counties like Cheatham County and Dixon County, Murray County, that have really no aspirations to become urban areas, one of the critical things they talk about in terms of connecting to the greater region, whether it's Nashville or Franklin or Clarksville, is the ability, A, to have opportunity for their youth, so children and grandchildren can stay in the region, they can access employment, they can access education and opportunity, and B, they can retain the quality of life that they currently enjoy, which includes a whole lot of open space, easily accessible. Some of the slides I have to check the notes because Carol slips them in on me. Recently, Clarksville, Montgomery County has fared very well in TDOT's road advancement program, and that's no accident. It's committed and organized and well-planned community leadership. So tying those transportation investments to an economic development strategy. We talked about how the 94 is the fastest growing ridership route in the RTA system, and it's no accident, in our opinion, that Clarksville and Montgomery County area is the 5th largest city in Tennessee and moving up that chart pretty rapidly. So good challenge with Murfreesboro, I think, to keep that competition going. We partner with TDOT on an awful lot of projects, but there are a lot of regional transit partnerships in our region, and that includes folks like VanStar, the TMA group out of Franklin, who operate a lot of our regional van pooling and carpooling. That is an opportunity if you have a business that needs to access employees and maybe it doesn't quite match up to what I'll call a true mass transit demand. The opportunity for van pooling is out there, and that's something that we run through the RTA in cooperation with the TMA group and would love to talk to you about. And of course, I mentioned earlier Clarksville Transit System, the great job that Arthur and his group do to do that local distribution. What the RTA can do is connect the various cities in Middle Tennessee, Clarksville to Nashville, Franklin to Nashville, Franklin to Murfreesboro, etc. We really rely on those local operators, because if we just dump you at a park and ride or a transit station in Clarksville, you got to get somewhere from there. So increasingly, we're working on a lot of collaborative and cooperative opportunities with the local transit operators to do just that. So Carol touched on some of the planning efforts. Last year, the RTA board unanimously approved what we call the N-Motion Plan, and many of you may have been to the sessions that we had doing public outreach, education, and exchange on the N-Motion Plan. And a lot of what came out of that in the short term for the Montgomery County, Clarksville to Davidson County commute, some shorter term issues like looking at bus on shoulder. What bus on shoulder is when the highway is congested, it's the potential opportunity for commuter buses to operate on the shoulder of the highway. It's currently in place in 12 states. It's been working in Minnesota for over 20 years, very successfully. 2 years ago in the General Assembly, we were able to pass legislation that authorizes bus on shoulder operation. And currently the RTA is working with TDOT to advance a potential pilot project. Sorry, it's not in the Clarksville corridor, it's in the Murfreesboro corridor. So it is in the I-24 corridor, just on the opposite side. The good news is, frankly, they desperately need it a lot more, frankly, than you all do right now. But we're hoping for success in that. It does require an examination of some of the geometry of interchanges and the width and pavement depth. And if you have concerns about, well, you know, I'm going to be standing still in traffic and that bus is going to be flying by me, typically what happens is it only goes into operation when the general speed of traffic dips below 40 miles an hour, and then the speed of the bus is restricted to 10 to 15 miles an hour above the ambient condition. So it's very safe, In over 20 years in Minnesota, there's never been an accident involving an injury using bus on shoulder. And if you think, well, 10 miles an hour isn't that much better than I can do in my car. Several of us had the opportunity to be in Minneapolis and experience it. When you are sitting on that bus and you are watching, even though you're only moving 10 miles an hour and traffic is sitting still, it literally feels like you're flying. And you know, people in the South, we're all recognized as being kind of nice and friendly. The group we had up there had a lot of, you know, I'll call them crude gestures for the traffic that was sitting there. So there was a certain, I got it over you on this thing, you know, that was something to behold. Because what we're looking for is competitive advantage. What we see in some of our markets with the RTA, where frankly we struggle with ridership, is if you can't provide that good, clean, safe, well-lit park and ride lot, if you can't provide pretty direct service and a decent schedule, it's going to be impossible to compete with a private automobile. So essentially when we're working with TDOT, folks like Arthur, we're looking for where can we gain competitive advantage where one more person, 5 more people want to try it. By the way, if you can't use it practically, you're getting 5 more people off the road, off I-24 at the wrong time of the day, is of great value to you. Streamlined bus service, so we talked about the additional trips. We talk about connections. We do extensive surveying of our customers to see, well, where are you ending up in Nashville? So when we connect in downtown Nashville, we do connect at the Metro Transit Authority Central Terminal, Music City Central at 4th and Charlotte, where people can make connections to service all over the city. But many of our services, including Clarksville, then continue on to other dominant trip destinations. So in the case of Clarksville, we continue on to the state capital, where a number of our riders continue for employment. And one of the things we looked at recently in the Northwest Corridor study that was wrapped up and accepted by the RTA board in the past year is the potential for commuter rail service between Nashville and Clarksville. And Mayor McMillan is a true champion of this. She is bound and determined. She will ride the first train to Clarksville after the last train to Clarksville departed many, many years ago. As part of that study, oops, I'll be missing a slide.
It's not in there.
Oh, okay, you took it out. Carol likes to keep me on my toes. But we examined a number of potential corridors. Frankly, the one that scored out the best for long-term implementation was using the Nashville and Western Rail right-of-way between Nashville through Cheatham County and Ashland City, and then on up into Montgomery County. That actually, if you've read or heard or seen anything about what Mayor Barry's attempting to do in Nashville, she's planning, and I know Joanne's going to go into the Improve Act provisions, she's planning a referendum on May 1st of next year to raise, it's hard getting the word billion out of your mouth. It's just a hard word to say, but about a $5.2 billion program that would actually jumpstart that by starting the rail program out of central Nashville and up to the beginning of the Northwest Corridor. It really only goes about as far as the Cumberland River in that program, but you got to start somewhere. We talked some about the park and ride success and the importance of those partnerships. If you have the opportunity, if you're going into Nashville for a full day, for a commute type trip, please give that service a shot. I've talked to a number of Route 94 riders, and they are purely delighted. And again, we talk about how nice we are in the South. They do feel like they have a little something over their neighbors who are either sitting in traffic or having to drive. They can text and drive on the Route 94. You can on I-24, or at least you shouldn't if you're on I-24. Please don't. You'll get in the way of the bus, and that's a bad thing. And there you see Mayor McMillan at our opening ceremony for that to be celebrated with Commissioner Schroer and TDOT. TDOT Commissioner Schroer has been a great partner, a great leader of the department, very interested in multimodal, and looking to advance that. And one of the things, if we do get to rail, is the ability to kind of reform our cities and our communities around what those lines might look like. So that's something worthy of giving consideration to in a long term of how that develops. In fact, actually earlier this week, several of us were meeting with the city of Mount Juliet They are on a rail line, or Music City Star Line, and talking about how they're looking to reform the center of their city to take better advantage of that rail station. Oops. So future improvements that we have planned in the Montgomery County and Clarksville to Nashville corridor, improving the 94X Clarksville Express bus service. So there are plans down the road to add additional trips, better connections with some of the origin destination opportunities, working with TDOT on bus on shoulder opportunities, improving connections. One of the things in Mayor Barry's plan is a series of neighborhood transit centers. So there could be the opportunities for even quicker connections from the 94X to more of the city of Nashville, and connecting in, frankly, better connections and integrated technology and seamless technology with our local partners like Clarksville Transit System. So this is all intended to be a conversation starter. We're doing these talks in a number of the counties, and frankly, it's really up to each local community to decide where to go with it. We appreciate, first of all, we truly appreciate the opportunity to serve Montgomery County and the city of Clarksville. Mayor Durrett and Mayor McMillan are truly well-respected leaders on the RTA board and among the regional mayors. Arthur Bing, you don't get much more respect than being elected chair of our state association among your peers. So you really have the leadership here to carry the ball forward. Now it's really up to the community to decide what you would like to do with it. And at the RTA, we stand ready to help Montgomery County and Clarksville tie into that regional vision and what you want to become as best we can. We're going to do questions in a bit. I think I'm turning it over to Joanne or Mayor Durrett.
What time is it? Because I know we're at Mayor Durrett.
7:57.
I will turn it over to Joanne Graves from the Transit Alliance in Middle Tennessee. Thank you, and we'll be back up for questions.
Good morning. I'm Joanne Graves from the Transit Alliance, and on your table you should have a sheet of paper that looks like this. It gives demographics on the area, so I hope you'll take a few moments to look at it. On the back of that sheet, it says Improve Act, and that's what I want to talk to you about this morning. You know, last spring, we passed a piece, the legislature, I feel like we, because all of us were so involved in it, but the legislature passed a bill called the Improve Act. Now, some of you remember it called affectionately as the gas tax bill. So it did pass last year. What's important in that bill is that there is language, enabling legislation language that gives new authority to the local level. Heretofore, if you wanted to raise revenue at your local level, you had to submit legislation to the state, and the state legislature had to bless it. Now, with the enabling legislation in the Improve Act, you can actually, it has empowered the local level to where you can set priorities for your local level, and you can determine if you want to put a surcharge on certain taxes that already exist. But it's subject to the vote of the local people. So let me say this again. If you want to generate revenue for local projects that relate to transit that you have deemed are priorities, you can put a surcharge on already existing taxes subject to the vote of the local people. You have to take it on a referendum, put it on the ballot. This is a major deviation from the way we've done business. It's a major deviation. You no longer have to go to the state. It empowers the local level to be able to control some of their destiny. There are specific taxes that you can put a surcharge on. Sales tax, some of the business taxes, some development taxes, and so on. And that's all spelled out in the legislation. But it's an opportunity for counties and cities who want to move projects forward at a more rapid pace to come up with additional revenue to make those projects move forward. Now, if you put it up on a referendum and it passes, great. That money will be collected and it will go into a dedicated fund to be used for the projects that you specified. You cannot raise revenue and spend it somewhere else. It has to go to a dedicated fund for the projects that the people approved. Well, what happens if it fails? If it fails, you go back to the drawing board and you decide, okay, does it need to be a different tax? Does it need to be different projects? Do we need to educate people a little bit more about what we're trying to accomplish? And you can take it back and put it on a ballot again, should you choose. So it's a new tool that the legislature has given to the local level that it has never had before. You've heard a lot about Nashville. Nashville is doing a referendum May 1st, and they are kind of the test case. And everybody, all eyes are on Nashville at this point. The entire region is watching to see what happens. But Mayor Berry very courageously has stepped out and said, we've got to do some things to alleviate the congestion in Nashville. And for somebody that drives every day into Nashville, and many of you do too, they do need to do something. It's rapidly growing. And so we're watching and waiting to see what happens. If Nashville passes it, I think you're going to see a lot of other counties move forward to try to pass something, because we are all suffering from prosperity. I mean, we are growing and there are more and more people coming, and we will be the size of Denver by 2040. That's hard to imagine, but we will be the size of Denver by 2040. So it does take us being proactive to say we need to do something now if we are going to manage the growth that is coming by 2040. Now, I do want to say that the Improve Act is not perfect. There are some cities and counties that are in the bill. There were some cities and counties left out of the bill. I believe next year you will see a housekeeping bill, so to speak, to try to include some other cities and counties. So be looking for that. It's important to you all. The federal government nor the state level is going to come and tell you that you have to do a referendum. It is strictly up to you. This is a local decision, but it is a tool that you have never had before. So I encourage you to learn about the Improve Act. I encourage you to look at your projects and see if there's anything that you might want to move forward a little more rapidly than it is currently moving. If you need help, the RTA certainly stands. They can explain some things to you. You have a planning organization up here. They can walk through some of that with you. So there are people that can help you walk through this process. Now, I'm going to stop because I know Mayor Durrett has a very, very important meeting. His grandson has a Veterans Day program, and he needs to be there for that. And as a grandmother, grandchildren take the priority over everything. So Mayor Durrett, if you would come up, and then after Mayor Durrett, we'll turn questions back over to Steve.
Thank you, Joanne. First, let me say thanks, Joanne, to you and Carol and Steve for taking time to come up here to our community. You got to do the 24 commute that many of us get to do every day or a lot of days during the week. Unfortunately, it's probably going to be worse going back than it was coming up here. I also want to thank everybody that came out today and just to join the conversation. Every day, well, I can't say every day, but there's not a week that doesn't go by that we don't get some type of phone call regarding what's going on with traffic, what's going on 24, what's going on at exit 8, what's going on at exit 4, what's going on at Wilma Rudolph Boulevard. And so really, it's become to me, and I think to many of you, a quality of life issue. And that quality of life issue is going to drive people away from our community if we don't address it. And Joanne really hit the nail on the head. The Improve Act gives us, at the local level, the opportunity to create dedicated funding to solve some of our transportation issues. So I want to thank our legislators. I want to thank Governor Haslam, and really I want to thank Curtis Johnson. Curtis Johnson stepped up, went into a committee meeting that cast the vote that allowed this act to move forward. So we really owe Curtis a big round of applause as well. So thank you. I wish Curtis was here. So I just again want to thank each and every one of you for joining the conversation. There's a lot of work to be done, but as Joanne said, there's an opportunity here for us to create a dedicated funding source, for us to create our own plan, and for let you, the people, to decide if that's a good plan or not. And I think that's what America's all about, letting the people decide. So thank you all. I've got to go to a Veterans Day parade, so I'm going to leave, but God bless you. Thank you.